Welcome to R&R's Exit Expert. I'm your host, Mildred Ingram, R&R's editor-in-chief, and I'm joined today by an absolute special guest, Marco Radocaj. He is a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning HVAC expert and owner of Balance HVAC. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
So today I want to chat about how attic restorations play a critical role in houses damaged by mold. So to begin, Marco, could you tell us about just Balance HVAC and your day-to-day duties?
Yes. Okay. So Balance, we are a brand new company. We started in 2023. So this is the inaugural journey. While we're new to the business, we're not new to the trade. Our team has worked together at other companies before, and we all kind of noticed that the trade in general seemed to be very oversimplified and watered down too much to where there is very little or no expectation from the contractors or the homeowners. What our goal is to push that expectation from the homeowners, and it's our responsibility to do that by kind of understanding what we do is not just exclusive to the appliance or the box, as we call it, itself. There is so much more than just the air handler and the outside unit, and it's so much more than just cold air. Our goal is to provide an indoor environment that you would want to live in, to elevate the indoor air quality for every homeowner. And if we're able to do our job, then the customers and the homeowners will start to expect that from all the AC companies. And that's our goal, is really to kind of push that expectation by leading the charge and understanding that this is a lot bigger and more important than just blowing cold air out of a box in your closet.
Exactly.
And then on a day-to-day basis, like the way that we do that, implement that is just through daily training. A lot of it is outside of our specialty, which is air conditioning. We do spend a lot of time understanding things like ridge vents and attic ventilation and how window heat works, because all these things are really important into what we do. And while we're not going to be the company that installs your windows or puts in your insulation, we are going to be the company you call when you have deficiencies. And we can only really fix what we can, and the enclosure is always going to overpower the mechanical system. So we just make sure that we have that holistic approach. Another really big thing is just working on the communication with the homeowners, because they're also a huge part of it. The occupants really put they tax those units, right? If you're going to use your equipment different than your neighbor, you're going to get different results, and your house is going to perform in a different way. So that's all the little things that we take into consideration. We try to grow daily with those things and just get better at communicating it and also noticing it while on the job. So
that's awesome. That's like full spectrum. That's 360 right there.
We tried really hard.
Yeah.
It was ignored for a while. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned the attic a little bit. So on to our topic today. Of the attic restorations playing a critical role in homes damaged by mold. Like, how so? Like, what is your take on that?
Yes, so I think the big issue in terms of, I need to start with kind of just when I'll define what attic restoration is, right? It is the thoughtful and considerate alignment of your mechanical system and the enclosure and the occupants to make sure that there's this result of complete control of the entire house. We always say from the tip of the roof to the slab the house is built on. We're from Florida. We don't really have basements, so it's the slab.
Yeah.
And then another thing I always kind of like to start to clarify is that there's two types of homes in our mindset. There's the older homes, and it's not just in terms of how many years old is the home. It is building codes. What was the house expected to do? How was it designed to perform? So an old house was built to breathe, and it was super inefficient. But that breathing meant the air was moving as designed all the time through natural ways, and it's nothing that really took any thought or consideration once it was implemented. New houses are very tight and they are very efficient. So any air movement within the entire home needs to be on purpose. It needs to be precise, and if you don't take accountability for it, it can cause problems like mold. And that's something we've kind of gotten really good at. Unfortunately, it's always after the mold problem has happened.
Right.
We would like to be in there at the beginning and do it right the first time, but you get what you get and you don't get upset. And I'm like that we get to have these opportunities to talk about these things and bring them to light, hopefully before they become issues.
You know what? I'm a consumer I mean, we all are in some ways, but I mean, like in this respect, I'm a consumer and I wouldn't have even thought to have that happen like before there's an issue, if that makes sense. Like
It, it
it's
really
all
does. And it's really, I'm sorry to talk over you, but
no, no,
it's a
no,
really
no.
hard thing. So like as a consumer, it's not your fault for not understanding it. Like we're talking about air, it's invisible. We're chasing ghosts. We always say we are chasing ghosts.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to explain to you this invisible thing that's happening if there's not something growing off of something. That's when it's easy because now I can say, hey,
Yeah.
yes, there's some infiltration issues. Notice all the mold.
Yeah.
But before that, it's invisible and it just is a really hard concept to really understand. And that's why we do focus on communicating that with the customer because it's great that we know all this stuff, but if we can't really turn it into something we can talk about, make tangible, and put some thought and value on, it's nothing.
Yeah, that's true. So, like, how do you identify and address those issues?
So a lot of it is the guys in the field, the feet on the street. A big thing that we do as we are learning and gathering information on these things is we kind of develop triggers. Like if this is present, here's how we would address it. And the triggers are really something that we're always looking for. We don't always see, but they're the smoking gun, right? So one example of that is a very common thing that an HVAC company would do on any call is get the temperature split. How cold is the air going into the unit and how cold is it going out? And temperature is great, but we want to know about the humidity. We want to know about the dew point. So we just use different
Hmm.
tools that are going to measure those type of components, aspects of the air, so we can identify these problems before they're an issue. Because while a system might have a great temperature split and the box is operating fine, if that return air has 67, 70% humidity, there's an issue. And you wouldn't know that with just the temperature reading. So that's one example. Another big one, especially in high performance homes with encapsulated attics, is if you go up into that space and there's no dehumidifier, one, you'll know because you'll start dripping sweat immediately, right?
Yeah.
But and I always like to say in Florida, there's a lot of single family homes. And once you encapsulate your attic, the inside of your house on the old house used to be on top of the ceiling. So there was this barrier. And once you got above the ceiling, that's outside, doesn't matter anymore. On a newer home, on an encapsulated attic, the inside of your house
Inside.
starts at the bottom of your roof. So it's essentially like having a second floor, and you would never build a 2-story house and just condition one floor. It
Right.
would cause major issues. So that's another big trigger. We inspect ducts. We inspect ducts thoroughly on every maintenance that we're on because we want to notice duct leakage. This is one of those big ghosts that we chase. Our duct leakage can cause pressure imbalances room to room. So rooms on the outside of homes or near garages can start to bring air that you don't want inside the space in as the system continues to run. So it's kind of battling itself if the system isn't balanced, if the airflow isn't set up. So these are all just the little kind of triggers that we look at. Every attic restoration after we notice these triggers and the customer wants to kind of start the process of the attic restoration, we start with the comfort report is what we call it. But it's really just a very thorough investigation of all the spaces in your house that you don't want to go. We're crawling through your attic. We're going through crawl spaces. We're getting
Ooh.
into nooks and crannies behind. Yes, it is. It's not glamorous, but we provide a lot of pictures and a lot of testing measurements and verification. And we really want to set the baseline and show you, again, the goal is that alignment of the enclosure and the mechanical system. And we want to
Mhm.
show you how far or close that balance is at the existing build or the existing layout of the home. So that's how the comfort report is kind of the first step to any attic restoration.
Oh man. And so I think you probably did you already touch on how the HVAC systems come into play with all of this?
Um, I didn't, but I mean, it again, we're talking about Florida, right? Where I'm
Yeah.
located, it's not the tropics, but it's really close. So find the water, find the mold. We are the like only source of cold in Florida, right? Inside of the house, everything else around us is hot or warm. So it's very natural for us to cause all types of little spots of condensation in between floors or in attics And if there's water, there's a potential for that mold growth, right?
Right.
So a big thing is oversizing of equipment. And I think this is one of those things that really goes under noticed on big remodels. And like, here's a very common upgrade. Everybody loves to get new windows, right? Like, new
Yep.
windows are great. They're super efficient. The way that they're efficient is your air conditioner doesn't need to run so long. So you save a bunch of money on your electric bill. However, the system does need to run to remove water. There needs to be some operation time. And that's something that's commonly overlooked. And it's a real, I don't know how else to say it, it's a bummer when a homeowner spends a lot of money on new windows, and the windows are great, but now they have high humidity and the potential for mold growth and all these other aspects of the HVAC system come into play that they didn't even think about when they were saving up for their new windows, but now they have to deal with those consequences. So
Right.
it's something we're having, a conversation so people can hear this at the beginning and maybe never have to remediate any kind of mold or assess any mold because we're getting ahead of it. That's ideal, but also these are things that are coming up, and we've kind of developed a niche of being the next guy in and solving these problems. And we'd like to be the first guy in and not have these problems to begin with.
Yeah. So, so if the mold problem has already been remediated and it didn't really involve the attic, like should the attic still be inspected?
It yes, absolutely. It always should be. Again, we want that constant alignment of the mechanical and the enclosure. A
Hmm.
lot of times, like what we say is that when we're done, it is a belt and suspenders type of application where you are not going to have a lot of opportunity for anything other than you to thrive in this house, which means no mold, no mildew, anything that can really potentially grow, because we're going to give you complete humidity control. We're going to have dehumidifiers inside of attics. Your system is going to be designed to cool your actual space with your actual family inside of it. The air is going to be balanced. The airflow is going to be verified. And really, the verification process is probably the most important part. A lot of people think that we need to necessarily do the work and they have some allegiance to another company, or they have, they live 3 counties away and we might not necessarily serve that area, but we still need to verify and validate that your home is performing. Because like I said, these new homes, it doesn't happen by itself. It's not a natural performance factor. It has to happen on purpose with machines. And if there's no thought or consideration or verification or validation that they're performing, you're hoping nothing goes wrong. And it's nicer to know that nothing is going to go wrong than to hope nothing goes wrong. So
Right.
anytime, I always kind of say that if you're removing a significant amount of drywall, it is really worth taking the time to at least have the conversation, get the comfort report, and see how close you are to being in line with all three of those aspects of the home. And then there's always different ways to skin the cat. We don't have to go all the way with everything, but there's a lot of potential to make major improvements and eliminate a lot of these mold threats, because the more can have this conversation before it's a problem, the better. So
Yeah,
we just want to eliminate having these after the problem has already happened.
exactly. Exactly. So, being a business owner and just in general, last question. What would you say the biggest career related lesson you've learned is like up to this point?
Yes, so it's a hybrid blend of two things. Jack Rise is a nerdy AC guy. He's a legend of HVAC industry. And kind of the thing that really got me to really fall in love with this trade is that I'm a competitor, and he kind of said it, and it's so just simple and eloquent. The person with the most knowledge and information will always win the day. And as a competitive person, I love the thought of winning every day. So I'm always trying to find new information. But really, it needs to be the person with the most information and the ability to listen. Because homeowners, as much as I think I'm an expert, they're the experts of their home. They know their home better than anybody. And if you give them an opportunity to talk, they're going to tell you things about their house, and you can make improvements, but you have to take the time and not assert your expertise without listening to theirs first. So that would be kind of my lessons learned.
Well, thank you for your time, Marco. And before we go, where can our listeners connect with you or learn more about Balanced HVAC?
Yes, they can go to balance-hvac.com. All our information, links to all of our social are on our website. They want to reach out directly, consultation, ask questions. Again, education is kind of what we harp on over here. info@balance-hvac.com. There you go. Thank you very much.